So first off, what do you see as the sort of biggest problem that's facing the world right now?
The growth of our species, just in terms of sheer numbers, and then also our consumption habits, is putting a lot of stress on the natural resources that we depend on to live. We've seen large-scale habitat degradation, global warming, these types of things, and energy resources are being consumed at a very high rate. I mean, you can look at any individual problem, say global warming or mistreatment of workers, exploitation of people, taking land from people, killing people and taking their land. Like, these things still happen today. Slavery. I mean, yeah, you can look at the issues like that. You can say simply, the issue is man's greed, or man's inability to love himself and others. You could look at it from that perspective. But yeah, I just think that particularly this culture, the U.S. culture, how I grew up, the way that the living world is viewed, and how consumption patterns are passed on. I just don't think this type of living is sustainable, and I think this culture has peaked. It's peaked with the ease of energy resources that are harder to find. Oil used to take, maybe, for every 1 calorie you put into trying to extract oil out of the ground, you got 100 calories of energy to burn. And nowadays, with hydraulic fracturing, shale, you're putting in 1 unit of energy and getting 3 or 5 out of it. It's just diminishing returns on the energy that we're putting in. I just don't. I think that this paradigm of there being very rich people, elites in any number of countries in different places, and then having a large mass of people who are being completely pushed, not being taken care of. I don't think that is very tenable in the long term.
Where do you see yourself in that sort of equation? Are you a problem solver? Are you addressing the problems in any way?
I guess I looked, when I first was becoming aware of and perceiving how serious some of the issues we were facing.
When would you say that is?
How old was I?
Yeah.
When I was 20.
20.
When I got to college.
Okay.
And that's when I started reading about climate change most extensively. That problem kind of stood out because of its scale and just the sheer difficulty of dealing with it. It's harder for people to understand how their actions can affect their environment. Our entire survival is based upon an economy of oil. Our food is oil. We transport everything with oil, and it doesn't seem like we're that serious about addressing these issues or trying to change our lifestyle. And I think maybe part of that is just the inevitability of, okay, this phase of growth has to play itself out, and there will be a period of disaster and dark age.
Do you think that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but, sort of latching onto an identity, is that what joining a community that's sort of focused on a more environmental living, is that a way of latching onto the identity, or am I misreading that?
I think it's much more diffuse. If you say you're a gay man, I'm a gay man. If that's your identity, and other people share that identity, and you find yourself in a large group of people, and of course there's all sorts of variants and stuff, but holding on to that as the idea of solidarity, that's a lot different than trying to live a less consumerist lifestyle. It's because there's so many different ways of going about it, and people can think that they're a part of the environmental movement, right? Like, you can go to a store and buy a product, and it's marketed and labeled in such a manner as for you to think that by purchasing that product, you are helping the environment, you're saving the planet. This is an entire industry of how things are marketed in this way. But is buying that product, is that really getting at the root of the problem? I don't think so. I don't identify as such, really.
As an environmentalist, or what's...
Right.
Okay.
I don't link my identity with mass movements as much.
Okay.
East Wind, I'm an East Winder, and as long as I live here and I'm a member, I'll be an East Winder. That's one form of identity. But I think the defining things here are income sharing as a big thing. You know, that could be a way forward for a lot of problems. That if all the income that was generated had to be shared amongst all the members of society, you know, it would definitely change your decision-making process.
Yeah, is that what drew you here? Or what aspects of Eastman drew you most strongly?
So in college, I had participated in Occupy, and I really liked Occupy. That like kind of awoke my political consciousness, amongst doing other things while I was in college for the first time. And that you know, I wasn't even the most hardcore person, you know, active in those circles, but I would like to go to the meetings, and I would, you know, hang out. The camps there were like a block off of campus.
What city was this in?
Bloomington.
How do you go from being active in Occupy to being here? Like what?
Well, yeah. So, you know, lots of new ideas, talking to new people got me really interested. Opened my eyes to a lot of problems I had never seen growing up as a upper middle class white guy. You know, and I got burnt out on that. I don't need to get all of this. Being more open in that way and not having this, you know, right now to come here you have to set aside 3 weeks of your life to come live here, and like who can all do that? You know, not everyone has the time, and you're uncertain as to what you're getting into.
Yeah.
So this would be, the business itself would be more open, but the whole idea of this would be like, okay, if we're gonna start this new cooperatively run business, like the excess profits from that business would be reinvested locally. Ideally to start new communities,
Okay.
or even to start homesteads.
Do you see that, like, that's a very specific to East Wind sort
Obviously.
of thing,
Right.
but do you see that as like the communities movement in general? Is that like a strategy for everyone, or is that a strategy for just here?
That's a strategy for Twin Oaks and Eastwind for sure.
Okay.
Because they have these businesses that people can plug into them easily.
Do you want the communities movement to look more like Eastwind and Twin Oaks?
No.
Okay.
I like that there's all sorts of different stuff going on everywhere.
Okay, so
I want the richer communes, and like, you know, maybe most people would think I'm using the word inappropriately here, because like most people want to consider Eastwind to be rich when
they have capital.
Right.
Yeah.
And Twin Oaks has, you know, they are rich compared to us for sure. But I want the money from these places to own land and make it easier for any number of people who don't have capital but have energy and are excited to start their own communities. And there is some of that going on. You know, the people who founded Twin Oaks founded Eastwind pretty much. And then Acorn was started by a group from Twin Oaks. Yeah, being more sharing with the businesses and having more exchange of information. I also think like internet is a very important thing. Any number of professionals, highly talented people, all they need is an internet connection to do a lot of their work. And like structures like Dancing Rabbit, you know, I think favor that.
Yeah, everybody had their own internet there, because everybody had their own individual dwelling.
Right.
That they owned.
Right.
And they had gigabit internet there, which.
Yeah,
you know,
we could
super
have that
fast.
here. We could have that here.
Yeah, Jack was telling me it's like a $94,000.
Nothing to get it. That's nothing in the long term.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But are we going to do that? No. Not now. And we're
Right.
going to try to look for grant money.
I'm sure you could find that.
That would be, that would be huge. Like, you know, we get 4 GLTE here and it's great, it's pretty fast, but I mean, I've started getting into the film and photos and doing this type of stuff, and like just looking at the massive amount of data.
So let's say you're successful. You sort of, I guess, spin off the business from the community, and that's successful in creating more communities adjacent to Eastwind and you know, throughout Southwest Missouri, and you have a number of them more. What sort of effect do you see that having on the area of the world that you live in?
I think it would be positive to get more local engagement, get more people seeing this type of lifestyle, and I think that would help guarantee the sustainability of this place. I think it in very hard terms about the money situation in business. Like, to me, this is just a good business idea at the end of the day, but instead of trying to make a profit, you're trying to provide income and a way of making a living to more people who live in this area. In our bylaws, you'll read, like, we're supposed to publicize this type of lifestyle, and that's what this is all about. Like, this work is probably the most important work I'm doing right now, filming things and trying to put videos out. I think there's a ripe opportunity right now to grab people's interest, and, you know, not any particular community, but just communal living, this idea of communal living, and this idea that we need to change how we live, our culture and our society.
Yeah, and that's really what that last question was about, was like not how things would change for Eastwinders, but how things would change for everybody else.
There's more back to the land interest lately. Fastest growing demographic of farmers is people who are age 25 to 35. Some people are leaving the cities, and some of the intentional communities can be, you know, even if people don't live there for their whole life, living there for 3 years and then taking that type of energy with them to other places and having smaller communes that aren't advertised, having homesteads, these types of things. I think these places can have a powerful effect on people.
To what end? Like, does...
Caring about food, caring about where your food comes from. I think that is such a basic thing. Like, where does your food come from? And really, if you don't, like, if you're not growing your own food, if you're not living on farms, or at least familiar with farmers, like, you just have no idea. You have no idea. And I think the industrial agriculture, I think that causes all sorts of problems for all sorts of types of people and for the environment. And if you're serious about trying to address these issues, then you should be serious about where your food comes from, and growing your own food. Because if you don't learn it, you just don't learn it. You know, kids don't. You know, growing up in the city, you might not have any opportunities at all to learn about, you know, the stages of plant growth even.
How does your vision sort of, is it for people who would completely disagree with your way of life? Like, what would you say, you know, to the person who wants to have monoculture and petroleum-based pesticides and stuff like that?
I mean,
are you trying to reach that kind of person, or not?
The people will come. They're out there. They just don't know. There's plenty of people who would be interested in this type of living. They just don't know where to go. There's plenty of places they can go and have a bad experience, too.
Yeah. In
the name of community, you know, when you have this wide umbrella of, okay, what's a community? What is, you know, there's the FEC communities, and I like them. I like the philosophy of the FEC communities quite a bit. They're stable, a lot of them. But there's all sorts there's religious communities, there's communities that border on the cultish, where you have a couple, you know, they exist out there, and people can have bad experiences. But I'm not trying to convince anyone to radically change their life. You already have to kind of be along the way for you to consider coming out here and actually wanting to do it. You know, otherwise, you know, you're just a visitor, you're just a tourist, and that's fine too. People come through here and check it out and get a feel for it.
I mean, I'm a tourist.
Sure, right.
Just to a large extent.
You're an academic, but you're studying these places.
Yeah, I want to keep following my passion of, you know, studying and writing about this and having academic thought about it, and because, you know, academic thought does tend to trickle down into popular perception and understanding.
Definitely.
And if I can use the resources of the university to study intentional communities systematically in a way that provides them the knowledge about how to be successful, then like that's sort of my goal out of doing this sort of research.
You know the FEC?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Federation of Egalitarian Communities.
Right, and I'm not sure if you should come to one of the assemblies sometime. Yeah, she had an idea, Commune in a box, you know, having a wiki, having a set of resources that would help people figure out legal things, figure out, there's all sorts of things, and like, why is Eastwind successful? Why has Eastwind been successful? Why, like, something happened with Twin Oaks and Eastwind that they were successful.
Why do you think Eastwind was successful?
I don't know enough about the communities that failed to really get at it. I'm reading a book called Cities on the Hill right now by Francis Fitzgerald. It's It's about the Castro in San Francisco. It's about Rajneeshpuram. Have you heard of Rajneeshpuram?
Yeah, that was in
Oregon.
Oregon, yeah, it was really big. Community got busted.
Fucking crazy. Like,
yeah. There's a Netflix documentary about them too.
yeah, just that's what excited my interest in it. I don't know enough about all the ones that failed. Mm-hmm. And Susan will say this, you know, like anyone who really wants to hold on can make something last for 10 years. You know, like if one person wants to make, you know, it'll be around for 10 years. Is it much of a community? Who knows? And a lot of them do fail within 10 years. I think there was a lot of idealism and you know, perhaps a lot of drug use and people thinking, oh yeah, let's go back to the land and like live and it all fell apart. Twin Oaks and Eastwind, like like some of these people were, you know, they're Marxists, they're hippies. You have this mix of hippies and then you have these real heady type people who are like, yeah, income sharing, you know, like egalitarian living. What they laid down in the Constitution, you know, the way the bylaws are written, and I'm not as familiar with Twin Oaks' bylaws, but they're similar, and that structure allows for the governance to work. You know, there's not a ton of bureaucracy here, and a lot of people like that. So there's that structure, I think, the decision-making structure, how a member becomes a member, and how you expel members. I think those are very important. And then, of course, none of this matters. None of it matters without a successful business. Mm-hmm. And that's what Twin Oaks had.
But Eastwind wasn't like Nut Butters didn't start until '81, right?
Right. So Twin Oaks had the handmade hammocks business. That was their main source of income. They have other businesses as well, and no longer is hammocks their main source of income. But Eastwind started by making hammocks for Twin Oaks. So Eastwind was production of hammocks.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that is how Eastwind started. There were people out here in military tents in the winter weaving hammocks. That's how the first couple of years it was pretty rough. And the people who moved here, they worked in the city for a year before coming here. People lived in Boston and worked city jobs, and they were looking for land this whole time. Like, I don't understand how, like, this group of people was incredibly dedicated. And I think there was at least one person who had some chunk of change, you know, family money that helped start things off. Mm-hmm. Maybe a couple people like that. Yeah, the businesses. So the hammocks business, successful business. You start off with a successful business. That's your income, you know, and then that business provided the capital for Nut Butters to start in '81, and now that's our main source of income. So yeah, the successful businesses having a certain quality of life. You know, people aren't rich here, but we have, in my opinion, a very high standard of living because of the food. You know, we have food come in on pallets on a truck every week. So we have some food from the outside, of course, but we grow a lot of our own food here. You know, all our own milk, all our own cheese, vegetables, pretty much. You know, we buy vegetables in the off season because people like it. But I view, and I guess that's the importance of income sharing and thinking in terms of business. You know, I could leave here and try to start my own business, right? And try to make my own money. You know, whatever. I could work for a corporation or something like that. But the idea of trying to create a business where you know the income is going to be shared amongst the people working in it in a fair manner, like that really excites me. And trying to get, I feel like there's so much potential for other businesses like this that can be started by communities. You know, Oneida, you know, they had
the silverware, or
yes, you know,
I don't know if they started with
plateware, silverware that it still exists today. You know, that's
so does Imana.
Yeah,
in Iowa.
It's I think the businesses are the most important part, as in having a successful business model, and then the communities can take any number of form, and those people can work in the businesses, I guess.
Would that business diversify, like go beyond Nut Butters, make other products?
The market is, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. This market is huge. It's just huge, and we can decide how much we participate in it. But I think that in the spirit of the people who started this place, like the idea was to grow and to show that this way of living works.
Was the goal to just to transform the rest of society to be more like this way of living, or to provide provide a second avenue for people?
Yeah, as it reads in the bylaws, it's pretty much, this is an alternative. You do not have to live the city life. You can come here, and it's not any particular one way of living, but it's pretty broad things, like not discriminating against people based on the color of their skin or their sexual orientation, not sharing your income, having communal property, sharing resources, trying not to engage in harmful trade, and trying not to destroy your own habitat, your own environment, to the greatest extent possible.